It was raining again. Not the soft, romantic kind of rain that makes the world glisten, but the kind that soaks through your coat and finds its way into your bones. Clara didn't bring an umbrella, she rarely did anymore. Some part of her liked the way the rain muffled everything. The noise, the grief, the world. She wandered aimlessly, past the same cafes and corner shops she saw every day. But then, there it was. A bookstore. She was certain it hadn't been there yesterday. It sat between a laundromat and an empty bakery, its windows fogged, a warm amber light glowing inside. The sign above the door read, "The Between Pages." Curiosity, or maybe longing, pulled her in. The little bell above the door chimed softly, and the smell of old paper wrapped around her like a hug she hadn't realized she needed. Shelves stretched far deeper than they should have, vanishing into a golden haze. Books lined every inch of the walls, and each spine bore a name. She ran her fingers over one, then froze. Clara Winfield. Her own name. She pulled the book out. It was heavy, bound in deep blue leather, the year embossed on the cover, 1996 to 2010. Heart pounding, she opened it. Inside were pages that told her story. Her first bike ride. The time she broke her arm. Her first kiss. Every memory, every word written as though someone had been watching. "What is this?" she whispered. "Your life," a gentle voice said behind her. She turned. The shopkeeper stood in the doorway between the aisles, a man in a dark coat, tall, quiet, with eyes like storms and sunlight all at once. There was something painfully familiar about him. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said, smiling softly. Clara's breath caught. Eli. The name slipped out before she could stop it. Her fiancé. The one she lost in the car crash 2 years ago. He smiled sadly. "You remember." Her knees almost gave out. "This can't be real." "It's real enough," he said, walking closer. "This place exists between lives. Between endings and beginnings. It appears to those who still have a story left unwritten." She wanted to touch him, to make sure he was really there, but fear and disbelief held her still. "Why am I here?" she asked. Eli gestured toward the back of the shop. On a small wooden table sat a single book, its pages blank. No title. No author. "That one," he said. "That's what comes next. It hasn't been written yet." Clara approached it slowly, her fingers trembling. "Can I write it?" He nodded. "You can change everything, if you wish. You can go back. Rewrite the story where I didn't die. Live the life we never got." The offer broke her heart all over again. She looked at him, at the man she had dreamed of every night since losing him, and saw both the warmth of love and the weight of goodbye in his eyes. "What happens if I do?" she whispered. "Then this world becomes your forever," he said. "But the you who learned to live again, the you who grew through loss, she'll fade. Every word, every pain that made you who you are, will be gone." Clara stared at the blank book. The rain outside softened, turning to mist. For a long moment, she stood between what was and what could be. Then she closed the book. Eli's smile trembled. "You're choosing to move on." Tears welled in her eyes. "I already did. But I'll never stop loving you." The bookstore began to dissolve into rainlight. Shelves faded, the bell chimed one last time, and Eli stepped back into the mist. "Then write it well," he said softly. "Write a story worth living." And he was gone. Clara blinked and found herself standing outside in the rain, in front of an empty building. The sign was gone. The windows boarded up. But in her hands, she still held the blank book. When she opened it, a single line shimmered on the first page. "Love does not end. It only changes chapters." Clara smiled through her tears. She went home, sat by her desk, and began to write, not to rewrite the past, but to honor it. Somewhere, between worlds, a bell chimed again. And in the rain, the bookstore waited for the next lost soul. It had been 3 months since that night in the rain. 3 months since Clara found the between pages, and since Eli vanished like mist in sunlight. She still wrote every evening, long after midnight, by the soft glow of her desk lamp. The blank book never left her side. But something strange kept happening. Every time she finished a page, The ink shimmered faintly, then faded, leaving behind new words she hadn't written. They looked like responses. "You're still awake, aren't you? You never did like sleeping when it rained. Keep writing. I'm here." The first time it happened, she thought it was a trick of exhaustion. The second time, she wept until dawn. By the third, she no longer questioned it. Eli was still reaching out. Each message appeared in his handwriting, the slanted, careful script she knew by heart. Sometimes he teased her. Sometimes he wrote memories she'd forgotten. And sometimes, his words were quiet reminders of love. She began to reply. Not aloud, but through ink. "I miss you," she wrote one night. "I know," the page answered. "But you're writing again. That's something." It became their ritual. Every night, she'd pour her heart into words, and the book would whisper back. But the more she wrote, the more the world around her began to blur. One afternoon, Clara fell asleep at her desk, her head resting against the pages. When she opened her eyes, she wasn't in her apartment anymore. She was back inside the between pages. The bell chimed softly. Dust motes floated in shafts of golden light. The air smelled of rain and old stories. And there he was, Eli, standing by the counter, smiling as if no time had passed. "Welcome back," he said gently. She ran to him before she could think. This time, when she touched him, he didn't fade. His hands were warm. His heartbeat real. "I thought you were gone," she whispered. "I thought you stopped looking," he said with a laugh that broke her. "But your words found me." Clara glanced around. The shelves were different now. The books had new titles, What Could Be, What Might Still Come. On the counter lay her blank book, now half filled with glowing ink. "What's happening?" she asked. "The stories you write are creating bridges," Eli said. "Each word brings me closer, but it also pulls you further away from the world you belong to." Her chest tightened. "Then why did you answer me?" "Because I couldn't bear the silence anymore," he admitted. "But you have to be careful, Clara. If you finish that book, you might not be able to leave." That night, the rain returned. And so did the choice. Clara sat before the open book, Eli's reflection shimmering faintly on the page. She could see him clearly now, standing in some soft, in-between light. "I could stay," she whispered. "We could finish this story together." Eli's voice came through the ink, steady but sad. "If you stay, your world will forget you. Your words, your friends, your stories, all of it will fade." "Are you sure that's what you want?" Tears blurred the page. "I just want more time." "Then write me a goodbye that lasts forever," he answered. The rain grew heavier. Thunder rolled like a heartbeat. And Clara wrote. She wrote about love that outlives death, about two souls meeting between storms. She wrote until dawn painted the sky silver. When she set her pen down, the book glowed one final time. Eli appeared before her, radiant and real. "You did it," he said softly. She reached for him, and he took her hand. "Is this goodbye?" "No," he whispered. "This is the part where you live." He leaned in, kissed her forehead, and for a heartbeat, everything was warm and whole again. Then the light took him, slowly, gently, like ink dissolving into water. When Clara opened her eyes, she was back in her apartment. The rain had stopped. The book lay open on her desk. Every page was filled now, but the last one held a single line written in Eli's hand. "When it rains again, look for me in the stories." She smiled through her tears. Outside, the first rays of morning lit the wet streets, turning every puddle into mirrors of gold. Clara stood, stretched, and opened her window to the cool air. Somewhere, she swore she heard the soft chime of a bell and the faint, familiar scent of books in the rain. She turned back to her desk, picked up her pen, and began her next story. Not about loss, but about everything love leaves behind. Rain had always been a reminder of endings. But now, for Clara, it meant beginnings. 2 months had passed since the book sealed itself. Since Eli's final message, "When it rains again, look for me in the stories." She did. Every storm, she left her window open and her notebook on the desk, hoping for the faint scent of old pages or the sound of that little brass bell. But the bookstore never appeared again. Until tonight. It was close to midnight when the storm began. The city blurred beneath a curtain of rain, streetlights shimmering like melted stars. Clara sat by the window, pen in hand, half asleep from rewriting a chapter of her new novel, one inspired by the dreamlike place she still wasn't sure had ever existed. A flash of lightning illuminated the street below. And there it was. Nestled between two darkened shops, where there had been only brick wall yesterday, stood a narrow doorway with a golden sign that read, "The Between Pages." Her breath caught. It was back. Clutching her notebook, she threw on her coat and ran into the rain. When she pushed open the door, the bell chimed softly, the same low, familiar note that vibrated through her chest like memory. But something was different. The air felt colder. The shelves, once warm and glowing, were dim, covered in a fine layer of dust. And someone else was standing at the counter. Not Eli. A young man, maybe in his 20s, with dark curls falling into his eyes. He looked startled to see her, as though she were the ghost. "Who are you?" Clara asked, her voice shaking. He blinked. I was just walking home, and the door was open. I thought it was a dream." Clara stared. "You can see it?" He nodded, eyes wide. "You mean you can too?" The realization hit her like thunder. This man had found the between pages, just like she once did. "What's your name?" she asked. "Simon," he said. "And you are?" "Clara." For a moment, they just stood there, listening to the soft hiss of rain beyond the glass. Then Simon spoke again. "This place, it's strange. There are books here, look." He led her to a shelf near the back. Dozens of volumes lined it, each bearing his name. Simon Hale. Simon Hale, 2004 to 2025. Clara's heart clenched. It was all too familiar. "Don't open the last one," she warned instinctively. "Why not?" "Because it's not finished," she said softly. "And it never should be." He hesitated but obeyed. "You've been here before." "Yes," she whispered. "A long time ago." They wandered the aisles together, the floor creaking beneath their steps. The smell of rain and old parchment clung to the air. As they passed a dusty mirror, Clara froze. For just a second, she thought she saw Eli's reflection beside hers, faint, smiling, proud. And behind him, the faint outline of countless other faces, watching gently. She turned to Simon. "This place finds people who've lost something. Someone." He swallowed hard. "My sister. She died 3 weeks ago." Clara nodded. "Then the bookstore called you." "Why?" he asked. "What does it want from me?" She touched the nearest shelf, tracing the titles with her fingertips. "Not what it wants from you. What you want from yourself. This place shows you who you are, and who you could be." As they spoke, the lights flickered. A soft hum filled the air, the same low, golden vibration she remembered from before. The counter began to glow. A single book appeared on it. Blank. Untitled. Waiting. Simon approached it, trembling. "Is this mine?" Clara nodded. "It's your story that hasn't been written yet." He stared down at the page. "What am I supposed to do?" "Write," she said. "But not to change the past. To understand it." He opened the book slowly. The first line appeared on its own. "The rain does not wash away the past, it teaches it how to grow." Simon looked up, eyes wide. "That's not me." "No," Clara said softly. "But it's someone who once needed the same thing you do." The words shimmered. For a heartbeat, Clara felt the warmth of Eli's presence again, like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. It wasn't her story anymore. It was Simon's turn. When dawn came, the rain stopped. The bookstore's golden light dimmed, and the walls began to blur at the edges. Simon looked around in panic. "What's happening?" "It's leaving," Clara said gently. "When the lesson's learned, the story moves on." He clutched the blank book to his chest. "Will I ever come back?" "Maybe. When someone else needs the rain." As the last of the shop faded, Simon's voice echoed faintly through the mist. "Who are you, really?" Clara smiled as everything dissolved into light. "I'm just someone who stayed long enough to hold the door open." When she woke, she was standing in her apartment again. Her desk was dry. Her window glowed with the pale gold of sunrise. The blank book was gone. But in its place lay a small card. On it were 4 simple words, written in familiar handwriting. "Thank you, Rainkeeper." And in the distance, faint but certain, a bell chimed once more. Morning came soft and golden, spilling across Clara's apartment like liquid sunlight. But the light felt strange, too still, too quiet. The card on her desk shimmered faintly. "Thank you, Rainkeeper." She traced the words with trembling fingers. They weren't Eli's usual handwriting anymore, more fluid, ancient somehow. The ink glowed faintly blue, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. Then she heard it. A whisper. Soft, like pages turning underwater. Clara. Her name carried on the edge of silence. She froze. Eli. No answer. Only the distant echo of rain, though the sky outside was perfectly clear. 4 days, the whisper returned, sometimes when she was writing, sometimes when she was half asleep. Always her name, always that same hush of pages. She began to notice other changes too. Rainwater never touched her anymore. It parted around her like invisible glass. The streetlights flickered when she walked beneath them. Strangers seemed to glance at her twice, as if sensing something not entirely human about her now. One night, as thunder rolled far off beyond the city, she couldn't ignore it any longer. She took the old umbrella Eli had once left at her door and stepped outside. The moment the first raindrop hit the ground, the world shifted. The city blurred. The air thickened into golden fog. And from within the mist, the bookstore appeared again, its windows glowing like the heart of a lantern. Inside, it was different once more. The shelves rearranged themselves into spiraling corridors. The smell of rain-damp parchment filled her lungs. And at the center of the shop stood a desk with an open book. Not hers. This one was older, bound in black, the cover engraved with countless names, some crossed out, others half-erased. A single phrase pulsed across the page in gold. Rainkeeper's ledger. She leaned closer. The words beneath it began to shift and reorder, forming new sentences before her eyes. Each storm brings a story. Each story needs a keeper. You have been chosen. Clara's breath caught. Chosen. The air around her shimmered. Out of the golden haze stepped a figure, not Eli, but a woman this time. Ageless. Hair like threads of silver rain, eyes that carried reflections of countless worlds. You heard the call, the woman said softly. You came back. Who are you? Clara asked. I am the one who waited before you. The keeper before the keeper. The bookstore remembers all its guardians. Clara's heart raced. What does it mean, Rainkeeper? The woman smiled gently. When a soul is lost between love and grief, the rain opens a door. Someone must guide them through their unwritten pages. That someone is you. But I'm not a guide, Clara whispered. I'm just. You are a storyteller, the woman interrupted. And that is what every soul needs most when it rains. Clara swallowed hard. And Eli? Where is he? The woman's gaze softened. He lingers in the quiet spaces, the moments you still write. He was your bridge, your first chapter. But he cannot walk the shelves anymore. Clara felt her throat tighten. Then why can I still hear him? Because he is part of the ink now, the woman said simply. Every word you write gives him breath. Lightning flickered through the windows. From somewhere deep within the bookstore came the faint sound of footsteps, hesitant, lost. The woman looked toward the aisles. Another soul has come. The storm brought them to you. Clara turned. A child, maybe 10 years old, stood clutching a soaked teddy bear, eyes wide with confusion. I can't find my mom, the child whispered. Clara knelt. What's your name? Lena. The Rainkeeper's voice was gentle. Her mother dreams of her every night. The girl is between worlds. Guide her home. Clara's hands trembled. How? Tell her story. She led Lena to a table near the window. The blank book appeared again, its pages fluttering open like a heartbeat. Clara dipped her pen into the inkwell that had appeared beside it and began to write. Once upon a rainstorm, a little girl wandered too far. And the world forgot how to bring her back. As the words flowed, the pages glowed softly. Lena's tears faded. But the rain remembered. And so did her mother's love. A golden wind filled the room. The child's outline shimmered like starlight. "Can you hear her?" Clara asked. Lena nodded slowly, eyes wide. "She's singing." "Then go," Clara whispered. "She's waiting." The girl smiled, clutching her bear tight. Then she dissolved into light, her laughter echoing through the aisles until it was swallowed by silence. When Clara looked up, the older rainkeeper was gone. Only the ledger remained open before her. New words had appeared across its page. One story guided. 100 more to come. Clara touched the glowing letters, realization settling over her like gentle rain. This was her purpose now, to help others find closure where she once found loss. To turn grief into story. To make the rain a bridge, not a farewell. As she closed the book, a soft voice, faint but unmistakable, rose from the shelves around her. Eli's voice. "You're doing beautifully, Clara." She smiled through her tears. "You're still watching. Always. Every time it rains." Outside, thunder rolled once more, and the bookstore began to fade. When the world returned to normal, Clara was standing beneath her window again, notebook in hand. The rain had stopped, but the scent of parchment lingered. She opened to a blank page, dipped her pen, and wrote the title of her next story in careful strokes. The Bookstore Between Lives, Tales of the Rainkeeper. Rain drifted down again 3 nights later, soft as breath, silvering the streets. Clara didn't wait this time. She was ready. The moment the first drop touched her window, the air shimmered. The smell of wet paper filled the room, and when she blinked, she stood once more inside the between pages. The shop hummed like a living thing. Shelves rearranged with a whispering sigh, letters rippling across their spines as if the stories themselves were stretching awake. At the counter lay the rainkeeper's ledger, its cover glowing faintly. She opened it. New lines had appeared since the last storm. A keeper must remember the stories before her. Seek the ink that echoes. Clara frowned. Ink that echoes? The sound of footsteps answered her. A man stepped out from between 2 aisles. He wore an old brown coat and smelled faintly of smoke and rain. His hair was streaked with silver, though his eyes were impossibly young. "So you're the new one," he said, voice rough like gravel. "I wondered when they'd send you." Clara straightened. "Another rainkeeper?" He gave a crooked smile. "Once. A long time ago. Name's Tobias." He brushed his fingers over a nearby shelf. Before the world forgot how to listen to stories in the rain, this place was never quiet. Hundreds of us kept watch. Then the storms faded. People stopped believing. The bookstore slept. Clara glanced around, feeling the weight of countless untold lives. And now it's waking. Tobias nodded. Because grief never disappears. It just changes its name. He led her through the back of the shop where the aisles twisted like dreams. The light grew dimmer, shimmering blue instead of gold. Books floated in the air, turning slowly as though the shelves no longer needed to hold them. "Where are we?" she whispered. "The archive," Tobias said. "Every story ever guided by a rainkeeper ends here." He reached for a small black volume. "Each of us leaves a mark. Look." Inside, words glowed faintly. "For my son, who found peace in the storm." He closed it gently. "That was mine." Clara swallowed the lump in her throat. "Did you ever stop hearing them? The ones you helped?" He smiled sadly. "Never. They become the rain itself. Every drop is a whisper of someone remembered." She looked down at her hands. "And Eli? His still, between?" Tobias studied her. "Ah. So that's your echo." "My what?" "Every rainkeeper has one, a soul that binds them to the bookstore. A love or loss powerful enough to open the door the first time. Without that echo, the bookstore can't call you." He tilted his head. "Yours still lingers because you haven't written the last line of his story." Clara's pulse quickened. "Then I can bring him back." "Not back," Tobias said quietly. "Forward. You can let him finish becoming part of the rain." Before she could ask more, a sound shivered through the air, the chime of the bell, sharp and urgent. The light in the bookstore flickered, pulsing red for the first time. Tobias cursed under his breath. A story's unraveling. What does that mean? Someone's memory is collapsing. Come on. They ran toward the front of the shop. A gust of wind burst through the doorway, scattering loose pages like frightened birds. In the center of the storm stood a woman in her 40s, soaked to the bone, clutching a photograph. I just wanted to see him again, she sobbed. Just one more time. The photograph glowed with golden light and then began to burn through, the image twisting. Clara recognized the look of grief so deep it distorted reality itself. She's trying to rewrite her loss, she whispered. Tobias nodded grimly. If she finishes that thought, she'll disappear into it. Clara stepped forward. Let me try. She took the woman's trembling hands. Tell me his name. Gabriel, the woman choked out. My son. Clara opened a blank page in her notebook and spoke as she wrote. There was once a boy who taught his mother how to dance in puddles. When he left, the rain forgot its rhythm until she remembered the steps on her own. The storm's roar softened. The burning photograph cooled, reshaping into a still image of a laughing boy holding an umbrella. The woman stared. He's smiling. Clara nodded. He always was. Light surrounded the woman, warm and silver. Then she was gone, carried into the quiet beyond, where stories go when they finally end right. Silence filled the bookstore. Tobias gave a low whistle. Not bad for a new keeper. But Clara barely heard him. The ink from her pen was still glowing and the words on the page began to change, curling into a message written in Eli's handwriting. You're closer than you think. She caught her breath. Eli. Tobias looked at the page, then at her. Your echo is calling again. What does he want? To finish the story you started, Tobias said. The one you never wrote past the rain. The bookstore trembled, a low rumble rolling through its foundation. Books fell open all around them, their pages fluttering in the unseen wind. Something's changing, Tobias said, eyes narrowing. The between pages is opening deeper layers, places even I never walked. Why now? Clara asked. Because of you, he said quietly. And the one who won't let go. Lightning flashed through the windows, casting everything in silver-white light. For an instant, Clara saw him, Eli, standing at the far end of the aisle, reaching out. Then the vision fractured into ink and thunder. The Rainkeeper's ledger slammed shut on its own, glowing fiercely. Across its cover, new words burned like molten gold. To free the echo, the Rainkeeper must write the final storm. Clara's hands shook. The final storm, what does that mean? Tobias met her gaze, eyes full of wary respect. It means you're about to rewrite the ending of every story that's ever passed through this place. The wind began to hum through the rafters like an organ note, low and endless. Every lamp inside the between pages flickered. The air smelled of lightning. Clara stood before the Rainkeeper's ledger. Across its cover, the glowing words still burned. To free the echo, the Rainkeeper must write the final storm. Tobias lingered behind her, his coat whipping in the sudden wind that came from nowhere. I've only heard that phrase once, he said. Back when the first keeper vanished into her own story. Clara's throat tightened. Vanished? She didn't die, Tobias said. She became part of the rain itself. A bridge for the ones who came after. Outside, thunder rolled. It didn't sound like weather, it sounded like pages slamming shut. She opened the ledger. The letters inside rearranged again, forming new lines of gold. Every echo is a story unfinished. To release it, the keeper must remember the moment the world stopped turning. Clara's hand trembled. She knew what that meant. The night of the accident. Her pen appeared on the desk, the nib gleaming wetly. She hesitated only a heartbeat before writing. It was raining that night. Headlights. Screams. The sound of shattering glass. Then silence. The air around her fractured like glass. The bookstore dissolved, and she was standing in the middle of the road where it had happened. Only this time, the world was still tinted in the bookstore's golden light. Eli stood a few paces away, exactly as she remembered him, coat half-buttoned, eyes bright with laughter he hadn't finished. Clara, he said softly. Her knees nearly gave out. Eli, you're real. He smiled. As real as a story told often enough. They met halfway between memory and rain. When she touched him, warmth flooded her fingers, then pain. The moment replayed itself around them. The screech, the blinding light, the instant that had never stopped echoing. "This is where it began," Eli said. "And where it's kept you." "You said you wanted me to live," Clara whispered. "I do. But every time the rain falls, part of you still waits here. You keep rewriting the moment, hoping for a new ending." Tears blurred her vision. "Then what am I supposed to write?" "Not what happened," he said. "What it meant." She took a deep breath, raised the pen, and the world bent into parchment. The rain slowed, hanging in the air like silver threads. Love is not the moment before the crash. It's the silence after, the choice to keep listening. The frozen drops dissolved. The road, the wreck, the sirens all melted into light until only they remained. Eli looked around in wonder. "You're rewriting the storm." "I'm finishing it," she said. "So neither of us has to stay here anymore." A great wind tore through the space, pulling them upward. Below, the world shimmered with thousands of golden reflections, every life, every story the bookstore had ever held. Tobias's voice echoed faintly from somewhere distant. "Clara, you're merging with it, stop before it takes you too." She shook her head. "If the bookstore needs a bridge, then let it be me." Eli caught her wrist. "No. You're meant to live. You can't trade your life for mine." "But maybe I can trade it for peace," she whispered. "Yours, mine, all of them." She pressed her forehead against his. "Let me write the last line." He hesitated, then smiled the way he had on their first night together. "Then write it well, Rainkeeper." She opened the ledger one last time. The ink rose off the page like smoke, forming symbols that burned brighter than lightning. Her hand moved without thought. The rain remembers every name it touches. When it falls again, it will whisper their stories. Not endings, beginnings written in water. The world exploded into light. When the glow faded, she found herself kneeling on the bookstore floor. Tobias was gone. So were the shelves. Only one book remained, her own, its cover now a deep silver, shimmering with the reflection of rain clouds. She opened it. Inside were not words, but scenes every soul she'd ever guided, their laughter echoing faintly. At the very center of the book was Eli's voice, soft as mist. "You did it, Clara. The door's open now." She whispered, "Where will you go?" "Where stories begin again." The page brightened. A single drop of rain splashed onto the paper and rippled outward until it covered everything. When she woke, she was sitting at her desk. Sunlight streamed through the window. The sky outside was blue, clear, impossibly clear. No bookstore. No thunder. Only the faint scent of paper and rain that lived nowhere but memory. On her desk sat the silver book. Its title had changed again. The Rainkeeper's Last Story. She opened it and found one final line in Eli's handwriting. "When the rain no longer waits, it means the story has learned to walk in sunlight." Clara closed the book gently. For the first time in years, the silence didn't ache. She stood, pulled on her coat, and stepped into the morning. The world felt lighter. And though the sky held no clouds, she swore she could hear the faintest chime of a bell somewhere behind her, soft, distant, eternal. The rain finally stopped. For the first time in what felt like lifetimes, the air smelled not of thunder but of new earth. Clara stood at her window and watched the world breathe. Cars hissed across wet pavement, people hurried beneath umbrellas, unaware that the storm had carried away more than clouds. On her desk, the silver book lay open to a blank page. The words that had once appeared on their own were still now. Waiting. She didn't write. She simply listened. The silence had changed. It was no longer empty. It was full of memory. 3 weeks passed. Her novel, The Bookstore Between Lives, began to spread quietly through online readers, people who swore the story helped them dream of their loved ones again. Clara never explained that it wasn't fiction. One evening, after a reading in a small cafe, a shy voice stopped her at the door. "Miss Winfield? I think I've seen that bookstore you write about." Clara turned. A young woman stood there, rain dripping from her hair. She clutched a sketchbook to her chest, eyes wide with wonder and fear, the same look Clara had once worn. "Tell me," Clara said gently. "When did you see it?" "Last night. In the rain. There was a bell, and I heard someone whisper my name. But when I tried to go inside, it disappeared." Clara smiled softly. "Then it wasn't time yet." The girl frowned. "For what?" "For the story to open to you." Clara placed a hand on her shoulder. "When it does, don't be afraid to read the first page." That night, Clara walked home alone beneath a sky half clear, half storm. The city's lights glimmered on puddles like scattered pages. She thought of Tobias. Of Eli. Of all the lives that had passed through the bookstore's door. Maybe the between pages was never a single place at all. Maybe it existed anywhere someone was brave enough to write through their sorrow. When she reached her apartment, the silver book waited for her, its surface rippling as though it breathed. She touched it, and words appeared, neat, careful script she didn't recognize. "Every rainkeeper must rest. When you are ready, the next one will hear the bell." Clara exhaled. "Then it's time." She took out a small notebook, wrote a single line on the first page, and left it beside the silver book. "When it rains, follow the sound." She closed the window and went to sleep smiling. The morning after, a light drizzle woke her. But when she looked outside, she didn't see the bookstore. She saw sunlight breaking through the thinning clouds, scattering rainbows across the rooftops. Eli's voice was a whisper in the air, softer than before but no longer sorrowful. "You kept your promise, Clara." She laughed quietly. "And you kept yours. The rain doesn't wait anymore." Elsewhere. Miles away, in another city, another storm began. A young woman stepped out of a coffee shop, holding her sketchbook above her head for shelter. Through the veil of rain, she noticed a glow between two buildings, an old wooden door with fogged windows, a faint golden light inside. A bell chimed once. She hesitated, heart racing, then reached for the handle. As the door opened, the smell of paper and petrichor enveloped her. A soft voice greeted her from somewhere within. "Welcome to the Between Pages. Would you like to start with your story?" Clara never saw the bookstore again. But sometimes, when rain touched her garden, she heard faint laughter in the drops, and she knew the stories went on, each storm carrying a different beginning, each ending folded gently inside it. She kept writing, not to remember, but to remind. And far above the clouds, where thunder was only a heartbeat, Eli watched the world he'd once loved keep telling itself new tales. The world outside Clara's window had grown loud again, traffic, laughter, children running through puddles. Life had found its rhythm, and so had she. She still wrote, but the stories came easier now, lighter. They were not about loss, they were about remembering. One quiet afternoon, while sorting old drafts, she found something wedged between two notebooks, a slip of paper that smelled faintly of smoke and rain. 5 words were written on it. "Meet me when the clouds turn gold." She stepped outside. The sky was pale and restless, a storm trying to decide whether to leave or return. She followed the color of the light across the park to the river, where mist hung over the water like breath. Someone was waiting on the bridge. "Tobias," she whispered. He looked older, but his eyes were clear. "You finished the storm. How are you here?" "The bookstore opens for those who have stories left," he said. "It isn't bound by walls anymore. You freed it." He handed her a weathered book. The cover bore no title, only a faint symbol, an open door. "This was written by the first keeper," Tobias said. "Before she became the rain itself." Clara opened it. Inside were fragments of a language she almost recognized, pieces of other lives, each ending with the same line. "When the heart learns to listen, the door will open in every world." She knew, Clara murmured. She meant for it to keep moving forward. Tobias nodded. "That's the legacy. We don't guard the stories. We pass them on." He looked toward the river, the sunset bleeding into the current. "My time's ending. I'm becoming part of the rain again. Someone new will need a guide." Clara reached for his hand. "Will I see you there?" He smiled. "You already are." The light took him gently, scattering into gold across the water. That evening, Clara sat by her desk. The silver book had changed once more, Its pages now shimmered with faint images of every person who'd ever found the between pages. She touched the cover. "Thank you," she whispered to Tobias, to Eli, to all of them. And as if in answer, a single raindrop struck the window. In its reflection, she saw a dozen worlds turning softly through mist, a child reunited with her mother, a writer finding her muse, a lonely heart discovering its echo. Every life was a story between storms. Years later, people told stories about a woman who taught them to listen when it rained. Some said she ran a hidden bookstore, others swore she was only a dream. But on the nights when the clouds turned gold, and thunder rolled like a heartbeat, a bell could still be heard, soft, patient, waiting. Inside a place that existed between breaths, books arranged themselves into new patterns. Pages fluttered open, and a voice, warm, steady, familiar, welcomed the next soul. "Come in," Clara said. "It's your turn now. Tell me where your story began." The bookstore waited, as it always had, between one life and the next. And somewhere, beyond every ending, the rain began to fall again. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more original novel stories. And stay tuned, our next story is coming soon.